A 17-year-old just clocked 44.10 in the 400 meters against full-grown professionals while still in high school. And when Michael Johnson, the greatest 400-meter runner the sport has ever produced, saw it happen, he said something nobody expected from a guy who spent his entire career drilling into people how brutally hard this event actually is. We will get to it. But first, you need to know who Quincy Wilson actually is. Because the record itself is incredible, but the story of how he nearly lost it all before he ever got close is the part nobody is discussing. Let's go. Chesapeake, Virginia. Regular town, regular family. Nothing about Quincy Wilson's upbringing reads like future world record holder. Both parents come from athletic backgrounds. Mom, Monique, was a Hall of Fame soccer and basketball player in college. Dad Roy played football at the Naval Academy. Older sister Cadence runs track at James Madison. It is in the blood. But athletic parents do not automatically produce Usain Bolt. Plenty of kids with athletic parents never go anywhere. What sets Quincy's story apart is a choice his family made while he was still young, the kind most families would never seriously entertain. They moved, not across town, not into a bigger house down the same block. They packed up their whole life and moved from Chesapeake, Virginia up to Potomac, Maryland, so Quincy could enroll at a school named Bullis. A private school with a serious athletics program, plus a coach the family believed could shape their son into something rare. Sit with what that actually means for a second. His parents looked at their boy and decided he was worth uprooting everything for. New house, new city, everything started over. All resting on a bet that this kid would be worth it. That is a staggering amount of pressure on a teenager who has not proven a thing yet at the senior level. And for a stretch, that pressure does start to surface. But before we get into that, you need to understand just how fast this kid was from the very start. Because the numbers at 14 years old were not merely impressive for his age. They were historically absurd. Quincy Wilson breaks Obia Moore's national under-14 mark in the 400 meters, a record that had been on the books for 30 years. He is still in middle school. The athletics world takes notice, somewhat. The kind of notice people give when a fast kid does something striking and they immediately wonder whether it holds up once competition turns real. Because here is the truth about youth records. They get broken constantly by kids who later disappear. You have probably seen it for yourself. Some 15-year-old clocks a ridiculous time and the whole world loses its mind. 5 years later, nobody remembers who he was. Because the body did not grow the way everyone hoped. Or the mind could not absorb the pressure. Or life just stepped in the way. It happens nonstop. So when Quincy Wilson breaks a 30-year national mark at age 14, the serious people in the sport are impressed. They are just not yet convinced. Show us what you can do when the competition is real. Show us what you can do when the races actually matter. Show us this was not a freak result on a perfect day with a tailwind and a weak field behind him. The doubters are not wrong to hold back. They have seen this exact pattern play out before. And then something happens that silences a lot of them immediately. But it also opens up an entirely new problem that nearly derails the whole thing. Coach Joe Lee at Bullis School, the man this family relocated states to find. What separates him from coaches who handle young prodigies is the one thing that sounds simple but is almost unheard of. He does not rush Quincy. In a sport where young athletes get overraced and overtrained and burned out long before their physical prime, Joe Lee builds Quincy's seasons with care. He shields the kid. He owns the schedule. He decides which meets Quincy enters and which weekends he rests. And he trusts the long game, even as the short-term results start slipping and the internet starts firing off questions. That patience is not exciting. It does not generate headlines, but it is precisely why what happens later is even possible at all. There is one piece of trivia about Quincy Wilson that tells you everything about the kid beneath the hype. After his Olympic debut in Paris, with the world watching and his name trending everywhere, a reporter asked what he wanted to do to celebrate. He said he wanted to head home and play Call of Duty with his friends. Not a sponsored dinner, not a media circuit. Call of Duty. That is who Quincy Wilson is. A teenager who happened to become an Olympic champion along the way. Paris 2024. Quincy Wilson is 16 years old. He gets named to Team USA's 4x400 meter relay pool, the youngest male track and field Olympian the United States has ever produced. 128 years of American men competing at the games, and nobody has ever been younger than this kid. He runs the opening leg of the relay in the prelim heat. He is nervous. You can see it on his face. He runs 47.27 seconds, which is not his best, but the team advances. And then in the final, with Wilson off the running order, the rest of the squad runs a gold medal race. Quincy Wilson is an Olympic gold medalist at age 16. He has not even finished high school. Let that one land. He is sitting in a classroom doing homework, and he owns Olympic gold. The whole planet is now watching this kid. Every meet he signs up for sells out. Every time his name lands on a start list, people are paying attention. The expectations climb from high to stratospheric basically overnight, and that is exactly where the trouble starts. Because there is a massive gulf between being a prodigy everyone is watching and being a champion everyone is leaning on. And in 2025, Quincy Wilson discovers exactly how brutal that gulf actually is. 2025 arrives and the wheels come off almost immediately. January, the Virginia Showcase. Quincy lines up in the 500 meters, a race he is supposed to walk through. A fellow high schooler by the name of Andrew Salvadon beats him, and not by a hair. Salvadon runs 101.49, Quincy runs 102.49, beaten by a full 2 seconds. The internet responds the way the internet always responds. People who had been calling him the future of American sprinting just 3 months prior are suddenly publishing think pieces questioning whether the hype was ever justified. Then the outdoor season opens and things only get worse. He loses at the Florida Relays, he drops other meets, he fails to make the 2025 World Championships team. The kid who was an Olympic champion at 16 cannot earn a spot on the world's roster at 17. A current Olympian goes onto social media and announces publicly that Quincy Wilson needs a break, that the schedule is too heavy, that they are watching a burnout unfold in real time. Fans are confused. Experts are worried. The people who bet against him from day one are feeling vindicated. And Quincy Wilson is 17 years old, dealing with all of this publicly while trying to wrap up his senior year of high school. Sit with what that actually feels like for a second. You are a teenager. You own an Olympic gold medal, and the whole internet is openly debating whether you are already finished. Most kids crack beneath that weight. Most start making changes. New approach. New training. New everything in a scramble to repair whatever feels broken. Quincy Wilson returned to the basics. Returned to Joe Lee. Returned to the track. And what happened next? In Memphis, silenced every single person. Pop your answer in the comments right now. Did you write Quincy Wilson off through that rough stretch of 2025, or did you always believe he was coming back? I want to know. July 13th, 2025. Ed Murphy Classic. Memphis, Tennessee. Quincy Wilson lines up in the 400 meters. Not a high school race, not a junior heat. A real professional meet stacked with real professional athletes. Bryce Dedmon is in the field, one of the fastest 400-meter runners in the country, a grown man who has been competing at this level for years. Wilson draws lane 5. He goes out aggressive through the opening 200 meters, stays composed. Then in the final straight, he opens up entirely. 44.10 seconds. The stadium loses its mind. Let me frame that number against the field, because it needs context to fully land. 44.10 seconds. That is the fastest any under-18 athlete has ever run the 400 meters in the entire history of the event, anywhere on the planet, ever. No 17-year-old alive has ever run faster. It is also the second fastest time any under-20 athlete has ever produced. And it was the fourth fastest time anybody in the entire world ran in 2025, across every age bracket. Not just teenagers, everybody, pros in their prime, whose entire job is training for this race. A 17-year-old high schooler delivered the fourth fastest 400 meters anyone ran that whole year. He beat Bryce Dedmon. He beat every pro in the field. He ran it from the front, in total command, like the outcome was never in question. Fans watching live called it genuinely unfathomable. One person wrote they had never seen a teenager dominate a race from the gun like that. Another wrote, it was one of the greatest performances track and field has ever produced. Not youth performances. Track and field, full stop. And Michael Johnson, the man who once held the 400-meter world record himself for decades and built his whole broadcasting career on explaining why this event destroys people, watched 44.10 unfold and had to admit out loud what he was seeing. A generational talent. The kind that surfaces once a decade if you are lucky. 44.10. Say it again. 44.10. At 17 years old, the kid who had been losing to high school rivals back in January. The kid the internet had already written off. The kid that people were claiming was burning out in real time. That kid just clocked the fastest under 18 400 meters this planet has ever seen. Now, let me walk you through what happened next, because how Quincy Wilson handled all of it tells you more about who he actually is than any number on a clock ever could. After breaking the mark, after the stadium erupted, after his coach apparently cracked open champagne on the infield because the rules say 17-year-olds cannot, Quincy Wilson posted to his Instagram stories 3 words. On to the next one. Not a speech, not a rival call-out, not a look-at-me moment, not a long caption about the journey and the doubters and the comeback. Just 3 words. Straight back to the grind. That is the entire person right there. That is the kid whose family relocated to a different state to make this possible. That is the teenager who went back to his hotel after the Olympics and played Call of Duty. That is the athlete who got publicly beaten for 6 straight months and never once panicked and never once altered the plan. On to the next one. And the next one is terrifying for everybody else in this event. Because Quincy Wilson is 18 years old now, he has not hit his physical prime. His best years are nowhere behind him, not even close. Elite 400-meter runners typically peak in their mid to late 20s. Wilson has a full decade of growth ahead. The world record in the 400 is 43.18 seconds. Michael Johnson set it in 1999. It has stood for more than 25 years. Nobody since has come within half a second of touching it. Quincy Wilson is already sitting at 44.10 at age 17. Do the math. Trace the trajectory. Picture this kid at 24 or 25, fully developed, racing on the sport's biggest stages, with years of elite experience behind him. The world record is not simply under threat if Quincy Wilson stays healthy, stays focused, and keeps doing what he did that night in Memphis. The world record is in genuine danger. And Los Angeles 2028 is just around the corner. A home Olympics, American soil, the entire country watching. Quincy Wilson will be 20 years old, an Olympic champion at 16, a world record holder at 17. What does 20 look like? So here is what I want you to give me in the comments. Los Angeles 2028. Quincy Wilson is 20 years old, home crowd, everything on the line. Does he take 400-meter gold and shatter Michael Johnson's world record on home turf? Or does the weight of a home Olympics finally catch up to him? Drop your prediction below. Every single comment gets read, and if you want the deeper breakdown of what Quincy Wilson does this season, and whether he can finally lock down a world spot, subscribe, because that video is coming very soon.